Sometimes the loudest moments in your life are the ones that sound like silence. You pray, but there's no answer. You cry, but there's no comfort. You try to believe, but everything around you screams, "Give up!" And in the stillness of your confusion, you start to wonder, "God, where are you?" Let me tell you something today. Something that hell doesn't want you to hear. Something your fear has been trying to drown out. God is not absent. God is not ignoring you. God is not late. He is moving right now in your life. Yes, in the middle of that storm, in the middle of that silence, in the middle of that struggle. Even when you don't feel Him, He is faithfully working. Sometimes the most powerful moves of God happen in the quietest moments of your life. Not every miracle comes wrapped in thunder and lightning. Not every breakthrough roars in life like a tidal wave. Sometimes God moves like a whisper in the wind. Sometimes He works like the rising of the sun. So gradual, so subtle, that you don't even realize the darkness is being pushed back until the light has fully taken over. And it's in those silent seasons, those still places where nothing seems to be happening, where God is doing some of His most holy work. We live in a world that celebrates noise. We chase the loud. We look for signs, wonders, open doors that swing wide with fanfare. But God is not always in the earthquake. He's not always in the fire. He's not always in the windstorm. Sometimes He waits until the world gets quiet, until your soul gets still, until your striving runs out of steam. And then, right there, He starts to move. It's so easy to believe that silence means absence. You've prayed, you've cried, you've poured your heart out, and yet it feels like heaven is on mute. You show up in faith. You speak the promises. You declare your trust, but the situation looks the same. The people haven't changed. The doors remain closed. And if you're not careful, the silence can start to sound like rejection. But hear this deep in your spirit. Just because you can't hear Him doesn't mean He's not near. Just because you can't see the movement doesn't mean He isn't working behind the scenes. The silence is not the end. It's not the verdict. It's the womb of something new. It's the place where faith is formed, where trust is tested, and where character is carved out of the stone of your situation. God's not slow. He's strategic. And in your life right now, yes, right now, even in your confusion, even in your heartbreak, even in the delay, He is doing something that no human eye can see. He's navigating behind the curtain of your pain. He's building roads through your wilderness. He's opening rivers in your dry places. But He's doing it quietly, not because He doesn't care, but because He's teaching you to walk by faith, not by sight. He's teaching you to listen to the whisper instead of waiting for the shout. Have you ever planted a seed? You bury it deep in the soil, and then for days, sometimes weeks, you see nothing. Not a leaf, not a sprout, just dirt, just silence. But under that soil, in the hidden place, a miracle is forming. The seed is cracking open. The roots are digging down. The shoot is pressing upward. But it happens where the eye can't see. God is like that. He works in the soil of your soul. He cultivates faith in the dark, where it's just you and Him. And by the time it springs up, people will say it happened overnight, but you'll know it's been in the works for a long time. There are moments when you're asking God to speak, but he's already answered, just not in the way you expected. You're looking for lightning, but he's shining through your peace. You're looking for a burning bush, but he's present in the breath that still fills your lungs. You're looking for a miracle in the spotlight, but he's planting strength in your shadows. God doesn't need to shout to be sovereign. He doesn't need to perform to be powerful. He doesn't need applause to prove that he's active. Some of God's greatest works were done in silence. The creation of the world started in formless darkness. Jesus was resurrected not on stage, not with fireworks, but in a sealed, silent tomb. The miracle that changed everything happened when no one was watching. And the same God who raised Christ from the dead is at work in you, even when you don't feel a thing. You're not forgotten. You're not overlooked. Heaven is not ignoring you. It's easy to believe that if God were really working, you would feel something. But feelings are not always an accurate gauge of God's activity. Sometimes the Spirit is moving in stillness, restructuring things in the spirit realm that haven't shown up in your physical world yet. That doesn't mean it's not real. It means it's in progress. God specializes in working behind the scenes. He doesn't just fix what's broken on the surface. He gets to the root. And sometimes that means pulling things out that you didn't know were buried. Old wounds, hidden fears, toxic attachments, silent prayers you whispered years ago and forgot. He's dealing with it all. Not because you asked again, but because you never stopped needing him. He heard you the first time, and he's been working ever since. So don't measure God's activity by your feelings. Don't confuse quiet with quitting. Don't think the silence means he left you. You are still held. You are still seen. You are still guided, even when the path feels invisible. The same God who parted the Red Sea can part the chaos in your life, and he doesn't have to announce it before he does it. He just moves. Swift, silent, sure. Sometimes the enemy tries to convince you that nothing is changing, that you're stuck, that your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling. But you need to speak back with faith and say, even when I don't feel him, he's with me. Even when I don't see it, he's working. Even when I can't trace his hand, I will trust his heart. Because faith isn't about facts. It's about believing in spite of what you see. And trust isn't trust until it has to endure the silence. You're not in the dark because you're forsaken. You're in the dark because something is growing. Something eternal. Something strong. Something that can't be shaken by sight or shaken by sound. You're learning to believe without proof, to walk without a map, to trust without clarity. And that kind of faith shakes the gates of hell. That kind of faith unlocks destiny. That kind of faith moves mountains. So today, I dare you to believe in the silence. I dare you to worship when there's no music. I dare you to praise when there's no sign. I dare you to stand when everything in you wants to sit down and give up. Because your God is not absent, he's present. Not loud maybe, but present. Not always visible, but active. Not always emotional, but faithful. The silence is not your enemy. The silence is not your own. The silence is not it's the backdrop of a coming glory. It's the atmosphere of transformation. It's the setting of your next miracle. Because God moves even in the stillness. especially in the stillness. He's at work right now. Yes, right now. Even when you don't feel it. You've been waiting, you've been holding on, you've been asking God when. You've watched others get blessed, others move forward, others receive their answers, while you sit in a season that feels still, silent, and stretched beyond your strength. And the enemy whispers in your ear, maybe God said no. Maybe he's not coming through this time. Maybe this delay means he's forgotten you. But I came to remind your spirit today, this delay is not denial. This waiting is not punishment. This stillness is not abandonment. It's preparation. You see, when God is preparing something great, he doesn't rush it. God is not in the business of microwave miracles. He's a slow-cooking, detail-loving, foundation-building, layer upon layer kind of God. When he gets ready to do something in your life, he doesn't just slap it together. He builds it with care. He prepares you for it while he prepares it for you. It's easy to grow frustrated when it feels like nothing is moving. You pray, but the answer hasn't shown up. You knock, but the door hasn't opened. You sow in tears, but the harvest hasn't broken ground. You give, you serve, you stand in faith, and yet you're still waiting. But what if I told you that the delay is not a sign of God's absence? It's the evidence of his involvement. See, when you're truly chosen, truly called, truly marked by God, he doesn't let you walk into blessings unprepared. He won't let you inherit something that your character can't carry. He won't give you a platform that your soul isn't ready for. He won't open the door until your feet are strong enough to stand in the room. And so he delays not to hurt you, but to help you. Not to push you back, but to pull you up to the level required to handle what's coming next. Delay is heaven's way of protecting what it's preparing. If you arrived too early, you'd waste it. If you got it too soon, you'd fumble it. So God delays. Not to deny you, but to develop you. He's sharpening your discernment. He's growing your endurance. He's testing your trust. Because what's on the other side of this delay is too valuable to risk with immaturity. Think about it. You don't put a baby behind the wheel of a car, no matter how much they cry for it. You don't give a toddler a house key, no matter how loudly they demand it. Why? Because they're not ready for the responsibility. You love them, but you protect them from what they can't handle yet. And if we, flawed human beings, know how to wait until someone is ready, how much more does our perfect God? Some of you are mistaking divine preparation for rejection. You think because it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen. But God didn't say no. He said, not yet. There's a difference. No means it's not yours. Not yet means it's still in process. It's still being formed. It's still being matured. It's still being designed with your name on it. Let me speak directly to your soul right now. What God has promised is still coming. The enemy wants you to think it's over, but it's just beginning. You've been walking in a fog of frustration, wondering why the doors won't open, why the breakthrough won't arrive, why the healing hasn't come. But what you don't see is that God is working on things behind the scenes that are directly connected to your destiny. You see, God's delay is strategic. It's not random. It's not pointless. It's intentional. He's aligning people, resources, opportunities, and even timing to intersect with your readiness. Because when God does it, he does it big. When he opens the door, it's going to be wide enough to walk through with everything he's been building in you. When he brings the blessing, it's going to be so complete, so undeniable, so tailored to your faith walk that you'll forget all the waiting it took to get there. But while you wait, don't waste the preparation season. This is not the time to sit idle. This is the time to grow. This is the time to pray deeper, worship harder, serve faithfully, and walk in obedience, even when it's hard. This is where your strength is being built. This is where your vision is being sharpened. This is where God is removing things that can't go into your next season. You think you're just waiting, but heaven sees it as training. And you're not alone. Every great man and woman of faith went through a delay. Joseph had a dream and then got thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and locked in a prison. Delay. But when the moment came, he went from the prison to the palace in a day. David was anointed king as a boy, but he went back to the pasture with the sheep. He had to wait while Saul hunted him down. Delay. But when the time came, he sat on the throne God had prepared for him. Even Jesus, our Savior, lived 30 years in obscurity before 3 years of ministry. Delay. But the delay didn't mean he wasn't divine. It meant he was in preparation for the purpose ahead. So don't despise your delay. Don't curse your waiting room. Don't throw away your faith because the clock seems to be ticking. God does not operate on your calendar. He doesn't follow your deadlines. He's never early. He's never late. He's always on time. And when he shows up, everything changes. What's coming is going to make sense of what you've been through. The tears, the closed doors, the long nights, the broken places. It's all connected. And when the blessing arrives, you'll look back on this season and thank God for not answering you too soon. You'll be glad he didn't give it when you begged, because now you're strong enough. Now you're wise enough. Now you're prepared. There's a version of you on the other side of this delay that you haven't even met yet. A version of you that knows how to walk in peace, how to live in purpose, how to carry power with humility. And that version is being formed in this waiting. So don't rush the process. Let God finish what he started. Because when he says yes, when the appointed time comes, it's going to be worth every second you waited. You are not behind. You are not being punished. You are not forgotten. You are being processed. And God doesn't process what he doesn't plan to use. So if he's still working on you, it means you're still in his plan. If you're still breathing, there's still purpose. If you're still waiting, there's still something to wait for. This delay is divine. Trust it, lean into it, and declare over your life right now, God is preparing me for something greater. I won't fear the waiting. I won't lose hope in the silence. I may not have seen it yet, but I believe my time is coming because it is. You've been asking, you've been wondering, and you've been wrestling with this question in your heart. Why is it taking so long? You've stood in faith, sown in tears, fasted, prayed, and still nothing. And in those silent, stretched out seasons, it's easy to believe that maybe what you asked for won't ever come. But I need you to hear something loud and clear deep down in your spirit. God's delay is not his denial. It's divine preparation. What you call waiting, God calls working. What you label as silence, God labels as strategy. What feels like a pause to you is often heaven's way of setting the stage for something greater than you could have asked for or imagined. See, we are so quick to equate speed with blessing. We think if it's fast, it must be favor. If it's delayed, it must be a dead end. But God does not work on human timeline. He does not bow to your clock or your schedule. He's not operating under pressure. He's operating with purpose. So, when you don't see movement, don't assume nothing's happening. Something holy is always happening behind the scenes when God is involved. You're not just waiting for things to get better. You're being made better while you wait. The delay isn't just about what God is preparing for you. It's also about what God is preparing in you. God is strengthening you in this space. He's maturing your emotions. He's teaching you to stand when you don't see, to trust when you don't understand, to obey when there's no visible reward. This is the season where God is building the kind of endurance in you that can outlast any storm. Some of the most dangerous people are those who arrive too early. They walk into blessings they're not ready to carry. They touch glory they haven't been refined to handle. That's why God doesn't rush the process. That's why he holds you in the fire a little longer. He's not punishing you. He's preparing you for what he's about to release. He loves you too much to give you something too soon. Because if he gave it before you were ready, you'd mismanage it. You'd mishandle it. You'd mistake it as something you built on your own instead of something heaven prepared. You're asking for a miracle, but God is building your faith. You're asking for promotion, but God is shaping your character. You're asking for a relationship, but God is healing your heart so you don't bring past wounds into a future covenant. The delay is not random. It is not meaningless. It is not wasted. It is strategic. It is measured. It is sacred. Think about Joseph. God gave him a dream, a clear vision of elevation, of influence, of being used in a mighty way. But after the dream came betrayal, rejection, a pit, a prison. That dream didn't look anything like what his life turned into. But what Joseph didn't realize at first was this. The dream was real, but the dreamer wasn't ready. He had to be shaped in the pit so he could stand in the palace. He had to be processed in private before God could use him in public. The delay wasn't a punishment. It was a requirement. Or take David, anointed as king while still a boy, but he didn't wear a crown the next day. No, he went back to the sheep. He was chased by Saul, hunted like a criminal, tested in the wilderness. He had to learn how to lead in hiding before he could lead a kingdom. The delay developed his heart. It humbled him, refined him, broke him in the best possible way. So when God finally elevated him, he had the wisdom, the patience, and the depth to carry the weight of the throne. Even Jesus didn't step into his public ministry until he was 30. And he is the Son of God. But even he respected the timing of heaven. He wasn't in a rush. He was in rhythm. And when the appointed time came, when preparation met purpose, everything moved. Heaven opened, power was released, miracles followed. But that only happened after 30 silent years. You see, delay is not a sign of divine neglect. It's the atmosphere in which God does his deepest work. You are being stretched, not to break you, but to grow you. You are being held back, not because you are disqualified, but because you are being sharpened. God is not ignoring you, he's insulating you. He's making sure that when you arrive at what he's promised, you don't collapse under the weight of it. He's making sure that the spotlight won't kill what the secret place has built. Sometimes we beg for doors to open, but we don't realize that what's behind the door will demand a version of us we haven't become yet. So God delays, not to torture you, but to transform you. If you take faith, you'll be fed. He's not betrayed you. God delays, not to torture you, but to transform you. You see, God delays, not to torture you, but to transform you. He always takes the fall so God can uplift you and form you. You're not just walking into a blessing. You're becoming the kind of person who can sustain the blessing. There's a difference, and that difference is what separates those who rise and fall from those who rise and stay. The pain you feel in the waiting is real. Let's not pretend it isn't. But don't let your pain speak louder than your promise. Don't let your frustration drown out your faith. Don't let delay convince you to settle for what's less than what God said. You might be tempted to grab the counterfeit, to choose the shortcut, to settle for what's available instead of holding on for what's ordained. But hear me, don't move until God moves. Don't grab until God gives. Don't settle when you were made to soar. There are things being aligned right now in the unseen realm. People you haven't met yet are being positioned. Resources you don't even know exist are being shifted in your direction. Rooms you've never walked into are being prepared with your name on the seat. All of it is happening while you wait. All of it is being orchestrated while you stay faithful in obscurity. Heaven is not late. Heaven is deliberate. So don't panic in the pause. Don't rush the process. Don't curse the very season that's equipping you for your next. Embrace it. Let it shape you. Let it teach you to walk by faith, not by sight. Because when God finally releases what he's been preparing, it's not just going to meet your expectations, it's going to exceed them. He's preparing something custom fit for your life. And when it shows up, you'll realize why you had to cry the tears you cried, why the door had to stay shut, why the crowd walked away, why the answer was not yet. Because what's coming won't be fragile. It won't be incomplete. It won't be halfway. It will be the full promise, the full reward, the full manifestation of what he whispered to your soul in the midnight hours. So lift your head, strengthen your heart, wipe your tears, and wait well. The delay is not denial, it's divine. And when the time is right, when you're ready, and it's ready, God will do what only he can do, and it will have been worth every second. Faith is not a feeling. Let that sink deep into your bones today. Faith is not about goosebumps or emotional highs. It's not about that one moment in worship where you felt chills or that prayer that gave you instant peace. No, faith is so much more than that. Faith is a decision to trust the God you can't see, to believe in a promise you haven't received, and to walk on a word when the world around you looks completely opposite. Faith is not rooted in your emotions. It is anchored in your conviction. And the moment you detach your faith from your feelings, you start to walk in a power that hell cannot shake. We've been taught to chase a feeling, We think if we don't feel God, He's not there. If we don't feel hope, it must be gone. If we don't feel joy, it must have left. But the truth is, your feelings are not facts. They change with the hour. One moment you feel on fire, the next you feel like the fire's gone out. You can't build your life, your hope, or your calling on the instability of emotion. You've got to build on something deeper, something eternal, something unshakable. That's faith. Faith does not need a mood swing to move forward. Faith doesn't wake up one day and say, I feel like trusting God today, and the next day say, I just don't feel it. No. Faith stands up even when the heart is heavy. Faith gets out of bed even when the mind is tired. Faith shows up even when everything in you says to sit down. Faith is what carries you when your feelings are broken. It's what keeps you planted when your emotions want to run. It's what holds you steady in the chaos when nothing around you makes sense. There will be seasons, long, dry, silent seasons, where you feel absolutely nothing. You won't feel the presence of God. You won't feel excited. You won't feel peace. And in those moments, your flesh will tell you, maybe you're on the wrong path. But the truth is, that's when you're actually on the right one. Because God doesn't measure growth by what you feel. He measures it by what you do when you don't feel anything. Do you still pray when your prayers seem unanswered? Do you still worship when there's no music in your soul? Do you still stand when your knees are buckling? That's faith. Real, raw, tested faith. And God honors that kind of faith. Because faith that stands without feelings is the kind that moves heaven. Think about the woman with the issue of blood. She didn't feel qualified. She didn't feel worthy. She didn't feel strong. But she made up her mind, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be made whole. That wasn't a feeling, that was faith in action. Or look at Abraham, walking up a mountain with his son, ready to sacrifice him on the altar. Do you think he felt good? Do you think he felt peace? No. But he trusted the word of the Lord above his emotion. That is faith. Jesus himself in the Garden of Gethsemane was in agony. He didn't feel joy. He didn't feel peace. He was sweating blood. But he still said, not my will, but yours be done. That was faith. And that faith moved mountains we could never see. That faith opened the door to salvation. That faith changed eternity. You are not called to follow your feelings. You are called to follow your faith. Feelings are a gift, but they are not the guide. They are a compass that can break. They can lie. They can betray you. But faith always points north. Faith always leads home. Faith always keeps you tethered to the truth, even when everything else is spinning. When you learn to walk by faith and not by sight, you stop depending on how things appear. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop looking for external proof. And instead you learn to say, I believe even here. I trust even now. I walk even in the dark. That's the kind of faith that can survive the storm. That's the kind of faith that brings breakthrough. Sometimes God will withhold the feeling just to strengthen your faith. He will allow you to walk through a season of silence so your roots go deeper. He'll let you move forward with no sign, No confirmation, no miracle, just to see if you trust his character when there's no evidence of his hand. And if you can walk through the valley with that kind of trust, there is nothing the enemy can throw at you, because you've been tested, you've been refined, you've learned how to trust without touching, believe without seeing, stand without support. God wants to give you that kind of faith. Not emotional faith, but anchored faith. Not hype, but holy trust. Not momentary excitement, but sustained endurance. Because when the battle hits and life gets heavy and your heart gets tired, it won't be your feelings that carry you through. It will be your faith. So if you're in a place right now where you don't feel God, don't panic. He's still there. He's closer than ever. Sometimes he's silent because he's listening. Sometimes he's quiet because he's working. And sometimes he steps back, not to leave you, but to let your faith step forward. You don't need to feel it to follow him. You don't need a sign to trust him. You don't need a rush of emotion to keep walking. All you need is the decision to believe that he is who he says he is, that his promises are still true, that his word still stands, that even if your heart is numb and your spirit is tired, he is still the God who keeps his word. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep showing up. Not because you feel it, but because you believe it. Your faith doesn't have to shout. It doesn't have to shake the ground. Sometimes the strongest faith is the quiet kind. The kind that whispers, "I'll still trust you," even with trembling lips. The kind that says, "You're still good," even through tear-filled eyes. This is what makes faith powerful. Not that it always feels victorious, but that it stands in the fire and says, "Even if nothing changes, I still believe." That is the kind of faith that pleases God. That is the kind of faith that moves mountains. That is the kind of faith that will carry you when your feelings fail. You may not feel it today, but that doesn't mean he's not working. You may not sense it, but that doesn't mean he's gone. You may not have butterflies in your chest or tears in your eyes, but your faith is still alive, and it's stronger than you think. Don't let the absence of emotion convince you of the absence of God. He is with you right here, right now, and he's strengthening you. He's stretching you. He's shaping you. He's shaping you into someone who can stand, someone who can endure, someone who can lead with wisdom and walk with power. You may not feel the fire, but it's burning within you. You may not feel the wind, but the breath of God is still pushing you forward. So walk on. Cry if you must. Crawl if you have to. But don't stop. Because the faith that brought you this far will not fail you now. Feelings come and go, but the Word of God stands forever. And your faith, rooted in that Word, is the bridge that will carry you to the other side. There are moments in your life when it feels like everything you built is falling apart. Plans collapse, relationships shift, opportunities dry up. And in those moments, it's tempting to believe that the enemy has won. It's tempting to believe that what was meant to break you has succeeded. But what if I told you that the same thing the enemy meant to destroy you is the very thing God is going to use to develop you? That what looks like devastation is actually the setup for your elevation. That the ruin the enemy tried to orchestrate is the exact material God is using to rebuild you. Stronger, wiser, deeper, and more dangerous to the kingdom of darkness than ever before. You see, the enemy knows he can't stop what God has ordained. He knows he can't erase your purpose. He can't cancel your calling. But he will try to interrupt your belief in it. He will try to discourage you so deeply that you surrender what was meant to be yours. That's why the enemy targets your hope, your mind, your faith, your peace, because he knows if he can break your belief, he can slow your progress. But the beautiful thing about God is this: he wastes nothing. Not even the enemy's attacks. God takes the very weapons formed against you and turns them into instruments of his glory. He takes the lies spoken over you and transforms them into lessons. He takes betrayal and turns it into breakthrough. He takes heartache and turns it into holiness. He takes rejection and turns it into redirection. What the enemy meant for evil, God takes in his hands and flips it for good. It doesn't matter what people tried to do to you. It doesn't matter how deep the wound is or how long you've carried the pain. When God steps in, nothing is wasted. Nothing is too broken. Nothing is beyond his ability to redeem. You might not understand why the pain came. You might not understand why the storm hit. But you don't have to understand the how to trust the who. God saw the attack before it ever came. He saw the betrayal before it reached you. He saw the loss, the heartbreak, the disappointment, and he already planned how he would use it to bless you. Not just to bring you through it, but to bring you out of it with more than you had before. That's how God works. He brings beauty from ashes. He doesn't ignore your wounds. He heals them and turns them into wisdom. He doesn't erase the past. He transforms it into purpose. The devil tried to bury you in shame, but God will raise you in strength. The enemy tried to silence you with failure, but God is writing a testimony so powerful that hell itself will regret ever messing with you. This is the kind of God you serve, not one who watches the fire from afar, but one who steps into it with you, who walks through the valley, who stands in the furnace, who holds you in the storm. And while the enemy is gloating over your situation, God is getting ready to lift you from the ashes with more grace, more wisdom, and more purpose than ever before. You've been through some things that should have broken you. You've survived some battles that no one else knows about. You've carried burdens in silence. You've cried tears behind closed doors. And yet, you're still standing. You're still breathing. You're still here. That's not because of luck. That's not by accident. That's the evidence of God's hand on your life. That's proof that he's not finished with you yet. The enemy tried to ruin you, but all he did was push you into deeper dependence on God. All he did was teach you how to pray with fire. All he did was make you more dangerous, because now your praise comes from pain and your worship comes from warfare. Now you know how to walk by faith, not just talk about it. Now you know how to trust God in the dark, not just in the light. God doesn't just recover what was lost. He restores it with interest. When the thief is caught, the Bible says he must repay 7 times what he stole. That means what the enemy tried to rob you of, your joy, your peace, your identity, your confidence, God is going to multiply back into your life. He doesn't just bring you out, he brings you out better. He doesn't just heal you, he uses your healing to heal others. He doesn't just redeem your pain, he uses it to launch your purpose. Don't waste time being bitter about what happened. Don't let the betrayal make you afraid to trust. Don't let the rejection convince you that you're unworthy. Don't let the loss blind you to what's still ahead. The devil may have meant to shut you down, but God is using it to raise you up. And when you come out of this, you won't even look like what you've been through. People will see the glory, but they won't know the story. They'll see your strength, but they won't know your scars. They'll see the oil on your life, but they won't know the crushing it came from. That's why you can't give up now. That's why you can't lay down and die in the middle of the fire. You're too close, too chosen, too called. There's too much at stake. God is still writing. The page you're on is painful, but the chapter is not over. And when he turns the page, you're going to see why you had to go through what you went through. You're going to see how the attack was actually the avenue, how the hurt was actually the hinge that opened the next door. So don't curse the process. Don't despise the breaking. God is not punishing you. He's positioning you. He's not hurting you. He's preparing you. Every time you thought it was over, he stepped in. Every time you were ready to quit, he whispered strength. Every time you lost something, he was already preparing something greater. You might be walking through something right now that feels like the end, but it's not the end. It's the beginning of something new. The breaking had to happen to release what was inside of you. The fire had to come to burn off what couldn't go with you into the next season. The battle had to happen so you could discover what was really in you. You didn't know how strong you were until you had to be. You didn't know how deep your faith was until it got tested. You didn't know how powerful your voice was until you had to speak through pain. And now here you are, not broken, not defeated, not forgotten, but rising from the ashes, rising from the trauma, rising from the shame, rising from the trauma, rising from the shame, rising from the disappointment. So hold your head up, wipe your tears, square your shoulders, and remember, what the enemy meant for evil, God is turning for good. It doesn't matter what the report says. It doesn't matter what they did. It doesn't matter how far it fell apart. God is the restorer. God is the rebuilder. God is the redeemer. And his word will not return void. And let's be honest, sometimes it takes a breakdown to finally let go of things we never should have held on to in the first place. We cling to what's familiar, even when it's toxic. We hold on to people who drain us, mindsets that limit us, habits that quietly destroy us. And God, in his mercy, will allow those things to fall apart, not to hurt us, but to free us. Because what you thought was your foundation may have only been, what you thought was your lifeline may have been your limitation. So when it breaks down, it's not to ruin you, it's to release you. Sometimes God has to strip you in order to strengthen you. He has to remove what's shallow so he can rebuild with something solid. He has to allow the collapse so he can pour a fresh foundation. And while it feels like everything is crumbling, what's really happening is that the weak, shaky parts of your life are being cleared out so that something real, something lasting, something eternal can be built in its place. You may be in a season where nothing feels stable. You wake up unsure. You go to sleep with questions. Everything you once relied on seems to be failing. People who once supported you have gone quiet. Doors you once walked through are now closed. And in this instability, your natural response is to panic. But that's when you must lean into faith more than ever before. Because faith doesn't need stable ground, it creates its own. Faith walks on water. Faith praises in prison. Faith stands in the fire. Faith keeps believing in the dark. And when you choose faith in the middle of the breakdown, you position yourself for the breakthrough that's already in motion. God is not confused about your situation. He's not surprised by the storm. He's not pacing the floors of heaven trying to figure out how to fix your life. No, He is calm. He is sovereign. He is in control. And while you see mess, He sees meaning. While you see chaos, He sees construction. While you see loss, He sees launch. Don't underestimate what God can do with broken pieces. We serve a God who specializes in making miracles out of messes. He doesn't discard what's broken. He restores it. He redeems it. He breathes on it. He multiplies it. Ask the woman with the issue of blood. Ask the blind man by the roadside. Ask Lazarus, who was dead and buried. The moment everything looked over, God stepped in and reversed the entire story. He's still doing that today. He's still bringing dead things back to life. He's still restoring what was lost. He's still making ways out of no way. But the breakthrough doesn't always show up the way you expect. It might not come in the form of a miracle that drops from the sky. Sometimes it comes disguised as a breakdown, a shaking, a falling apart, a letting go, a necessary end. And that's the hard part. Surrendering to what God is doing when you can't see the full picture. Trusting that even though it hurts, it's helping. Even though it's confusing, it's cleansing. Even though it's uncomfortable, it's cultivating something in you that couldn't have grown otherwise. Some of the deepest wisdom is born in the dark. Some of the richest strength is forged in the fire. And some of the most powerful testimonies come from the messiest moments. God is not afraid of your breakdown. He's not intimidated by your emotions. He's not distant because of your question. In fact, He draws closer. He leans in. And if you'll be still long enough, if you'll stop trying to fix it on your own, if you'll surrender the urge to control, you'll begin to feel His hand guiding you through the rubble. You'll begin to hear His voice, gentle, steady, sure, saying, "I'm still here. I'm never left. And I'm building something new." The truth is, there are things you prayed for that are on the other side of this breaking. You asked God to take you deeper. You asked Him to grow your faith. You asked Him to use your life. But we often forget that God doesn't answer those prayers with ease. He answers them with transformation. And transformation rarely feels like triumph in the moment. It feels like tearing, pruning, pressing. It feels like a breakdown. But don't confuse the process with the promise. The breakdown is not the destination. It's the path. What's coming is greater than what you've lost. What's ahead is stronger than what's behind. And even if you can't see the full picture yet, you can trust the one holding the brush. He is painting beauty with the ashes. He is weaving glory into the ruins. He is setting the stage for a story that will testify of His faithfulness in ways you never imagined. So don't quit now. Don't curse this moment. Don't give up in the middle. What looks like destruction is actually divine development. What feels like the end is just the beginning of something new. What sounds like silence is full of God's whisper. And what seems like a breakdown may just be the birthplace of your greatest breakthrough. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to feel strong every moment. You just have to stay open. Stay surrendered. Stay believing. Because God is not finished. He's still writing. And the next chapter of your life after this breakdown is going to be filled with purpose, power, and proof that He never stopped working even when you couldn't see it. So here you are, standing in the middle of what feels like a breakdown, carrying questions that haven't been answered, and walking roads you never chose. But if you hear nothing else today, hear this: God is not done. This is not how your story ends. This is not how your story ends. You may feel like you're falling apart, but you're actually falling into place. This season may be uncomfortable, but it's not unintentional. The breakdown is not your burial, it's your birth into something greater. Everything you've walked through,